I want to start with a disclaimer. Don't worry. Nobody in this story dies. On a chilly December morning, my mother is suddenly shaking me awake, saying, "Oh my God, our Wi-Fi's broken." This has me awake in seconds. I have a residency interview today, a 5-hour-long affair that is supposed to take place over Zoom. I bolt out of bed and I can hear my mom on the phone with AT&T berating the representative that she'd like to speak to their manager, but to no avail. There is nothing they can do for our Wi-Fi today. My dad tells me to calm down, he can take me to work to use his office computer, and we still have 2 hours before the interview starts. In a haze, I get dressed and jump into my dad's car, and we're halfway there when I realize, I forgot my mask. He hands me a mask from his center console, and we drive the rest of the way in silence, me slightly shaking. When we get to his work, my dad leads me to an empty room where I do the interview, which I think goes relatively well. He's in the next room, and at one point, I remember looking out the window, watching him walk towards his car. His head was bent down against the cold, and his steps were shuffling. And it's one of those moments where I suddenly, sadly realize just how old he's getting. I'm suddenly hit by an intrusive thought. What would happen to my dad if my mother passed away before him? I mean, how would he function? How would he be able to go on? Or what if the reverse happens? I quickly push the thought away. In the afternoon, I text my dad that the interview's over. He comes in and tells me,
"I think we should go home early. I'm having a lot of muscle aches."
I raised my eyebrows at this for a second, worried about COVID-19, but again, I quickly pushed the thought away. My dad is old. He has back pain all the time and is always tired. On the way home, we stop at Costco. In driving home after that, I instinctively keep my mask on out of habit, but my dad takes his off. He seemed pensive. At one point, he even blurted out,
"I don't think we should go to Costco anymore. It's not safe from COVID. Let's order groceries online from now on."
Not sure why this came to him so suddenly, I say, "Sure, Daddy, we can do that." At home, he decides to go to bed at 4 p.m. I start cooking something that I had been craving for a while. An enormous, multi-layered lasagna. My sister's coming home today, and it's a favorite for both of us. Humming to myself, I stack layers of pasta, ricotta cheese, and tomato sauce. Grinning, I am topping my creation with slabs of mozzarella, and I'm just putting it into the oven when I hear my dad yell something from across the house. I close the oven, still have my oven mitts on, and rush into my parents' bedroom. My dad is in bed, looking small against the mass of blankets and pillows, my mom hovering over him. "What's going on?" I ask worriedly, my hands waving back and forth, looking almost comical in the giant red oven mitts.
"Nothing, go back to the kitchen,"
my mom says, oddly expressionless. I retreat to check on my lasagna, but there's a knot in my stomach now. My mom enters the kitchen, holding a thermometer. I turn to her. "Does he have a fever?" "His temperature's 100.1. I breathe a small sigh of relief. Not a real fever. Had to be at least 100.4 for that. I mean, it was probably nothing, definitely not COVID. I mean, maybe a cold, nothing more, definitely not COVID, right? Still, my mind goes to my sister. who at this moment is in a car on the highway barreling straight toward us. I express my worry to my mom, who instinctively refuses, but I call my sister. Hey, I don't want to worry you, but Daddy has a low-grade fever, and I don't think you should come home tonight. She sounds shaken on the other side of the line, but I insist that it's definitely not COVID. We're just taking precautions. I putter around the kitchen while my mom calls our family doctor, pleading for a rapid COVID test, and miraculously, we're able to get one that very night. My parents hop in the car and drive to the hospital, and I finally take the lasagna out of the oven. Normally, it would be a glistening, mouth-watering masterpiece. I cut myself a slice and stare at it, suddenly overcome by a wave of nausea. I push the piece back in the baking dish and slink off to my bedroom. My parents come home around midnight. My dad immediately going back to bed, and almost as soon as they come home, the test results come back positive. My anxiety is through the roof now. My mom is anxiously tearing the house apart, trying to find the pulse oximeter she had bought months ago for this very occasion, but she can't find where she put it. I try to tell her to go to bed, to look for it in the morning, but she refuses. I crawl under my covers, listening to her opening and closing closets and drawers for hours. In the morning, I insist that my parents stay in their separate rooms, and that I will do all the cooking, serving the meals on trays outside their doors. My mom balks at the idea, but I tell her that she's had more exposure to my dad than I have. I mean, she even slept in the same bed as him the night before he tested positive. But honestly, I feel a sense of guilt, a need to be busy serving my parents, because otherwise I know I'll go insane inside my room. So I spend the whole day cooking while wearing my mask and giving them food and phone chargers and anything else they may need. Just trying to keep busy to avoid the dark thoughts. But unfortunately, there's only so much I can do. In my head, I hear news anchors on repeat, saying loud, ominous headlines over and over. ICUs at capacity as COVID numbers surge. Thousands of new deaths every day. Bodies pile up in freezer trucks as morgues reach overcapacity. I cannot get the image of the freezer trucks out of my mind. I can't stop thinking about my dad's body being zipped into a black bag and tossed in the back of an ice cream truck. In my mind, he is already there. He is already dead. I call him through FaceTime. He seems in good spirits, possibly for my sake, but I start crying almost immediately, thinking about all the things that he would miss. I think about the whole day that we spent together before he tested positive. Driving in the car to and from work, doing the interview in his office, going shopping, and with a sinking feeling, I realize now why he was so insistent about ordering groceries online from now on. He was feeling the symptoms coming on, and probably feeling guilty about being in Costco at the same time. I can't stop thinking about the weird COVID headlines about how some people never recover their sense of smell, how some people's teeth fall out, how others get blood clots, and my ears perk up every time I hear my dad coughing from across the house, trying to analyze, is that a dry, superficial cough or a deeper one, more dangerous? My mom and I get tested twice that week, and both times hers comes back negative and mine is inconclusive. Internally, I feel a sense of shame, of guilt, but more than that, there's shame, because my family had been so careful. I mean, we even wiped down our groceries and Amazon packages. We were all careful, pragmatic scientists, even wearing our masks on the street when there was nobody else around. Getting COVID seemed like a badge of irresponsibility, even of Trumpism. How could we have let this happen? I feel like I can't tell anyone, especially not my med school friends. I mean, honestly, I feel so guilty about going home in the first place. I'm able to complete 6 more residency interviews and 10 social hours over Zoom before I can finally get a result that comes back positive. But by then, my symptoms are already over. And even my dad's symptoms, while slightly worse than mine with daily fevers, resolve almost completely after just a week. Only 2 weeks. 2 weeks after this whole incident, we all emerge from our separate bedrooms, and I start putting up the Christmas tree. It all seems like a bad dream now, slowly fading away. I know that my dad and I were incredibly lucky to have mild cases of COVID-19. I know that my mom was incredibly lucky to somehow avoid getting infected, my sister too. And after all of it, I ask myself, was it worth it going home for winter break? And personally, my answer is yes, in hindsight, because as I said in the beginning, thank God nobody died. I'm so grateful I was able to be home with my family and to help them in their time of need. I don't want to sound irresponsible. Practically, I should have stayed home. I know that, but if I had been alone here in New York City while my dad tested positive for COVID-19, I'm not sure, honestly, that I would have been able to survive my own crippling anxiety in my quiet room on the 13th floor. Honestly, I'm not sure that I would have been able to walk towards my screenless window and gaze out into the city as I do on so many sleepless nights and not reach to open it. I try not to think about it too hard, but To be honest, in the back of my mind, that window was always there. Cold wind whistling on the other side of it. The sun never rises in front of that window, but here, in the real world, I'm glad we all survived to see the dawn.